I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 138th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss the National Emergency Act, its purpose, its uses, and its misuses. The National Emergency Act was enacted in 1974 and signed into law by President Ford. Since then, it's been used 58 times, and 31 of those declarations are still in effect. Today's panel, beginning on my left, is Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council. On her left is Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services, and on his left is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist and all-around Renaissance man.
Thank you, John.
Now, Patty, in 1974, the National Emergency Act was passed in part to stop open-ended states of national emergency, which surprised me to read that. Yet, of the 58 declarations issued since then, 31 are still in effect. What do you make of that?
Well, according to the Act, Congress is supposed to, every 6 months, vote on whether or not to keep it in place. And then the House has to pass it, the Senate has to pass it. It goes to, and one of the things that they did change is that the president has to approve it. If he vetoes it, then it goes back, just like normal, to the Congress in order to overrule that. In the, 38 years? How many years is it? They've never met once to determine if it should stay in place. So that's obviously the reason it's still there, because Congress, gee, what a surprise, didn't do their job and hasn't managed to act on that. Also, the president has to renew it every year. Actually has to state, now I don't know if our president, very honestly, I couldn't find out if our presidents are actually renewing all of these every year, or if they just
don't they have to?
Well, they have to, but I don't know.
Yeah. I can't find anything that they ever have.
Exactly. So I'm not sure if there's something they have to sign, if it's so insignificant that we don't hear about it. But I've never heard that. I think in some cases they just think problem solved, it's over. Yeah. And let it go at that.
You look down at the list, though, of the emergency declarations, and none of them are particularly controversial.
No, they're not. I think Obama did one with the health crisis.
Yeah, I happened to find a statement of that, a listing of that. It's the H1N1 crisis, and everybody needed to get a flu vaccine.
Exactly. And once they did, obviously that should have ended when they got the flu vaccine, but for some reason they have chosen not to do so.
I have a pen and I have a phone and a bad memory.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, isn't like the Korean conflict is still on the books as one, and it was before the Act.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
There's a number that
there are 3 that are still on the books.
Korea.
I think I wrote them.
I forget what the other ones are. It was the justification for Vietnam was the Korean conflict, and they went through that way. But why they have decided not to end them specifically, I don't know. The Act was it 74?
Yeah.
Was actually to curb these and to bring some conclusion to them. But it hasn't done that because no one has actually done their job in order to curtail them. It's obviously coming to light because, very honestly, I knew nothing about this prior to this topic coming up. The only reason this has come into place is because of the possibility of the president using this in order to get his money for the wall. I think possibly one of the reasons he hasn't, as of this point, number one, it's debatable whether it's legal for him to do it. Now, you can find arguments on both sides, and I've heard attorneys and scholars talk about it with very good points on both sides, so I'm not sure. But there is a concern that if he were to do this, that it would open the doors so that if you have a president from a different party, they could come in and say, okay, climate change is now a national emergency, let's declare this. And other things that perhaps wouldn't apply in this particular area. So, but it's an interesting topic.
Bryan, what do you think?
I'm with Patty. I had not really spent any time trying to determine what this was, other than when Mr. Trump started talking about declaring a national emergency and beginning to build the wall and getting the funding and all that kind of stuff. But as I read up about it, I mean, it seems like there's procedures in place where he can't just act like a king. You know, there has to be buy-in from both the Senate and the House before something like that gets put in place. I think sometimes as with government, something gets on the books, nobody cares. Nobody wants to go back and say, oh, we don't have an H1N1 emergency anymore.
What did Reagan used to say? There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program.
Right. Exactly.
I like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, it's getting some press now because, like Patty said, Mr. Trump has decided to throw that card on the table, and that he's doing a variety of things to get his get more border security and all that kind of stuff. So
Don't you think it's partly though because the Democrats are so desperate to make sure he does not get his key campaign promise?
Yeah, well, I think we talked about in the last thing, it's become a very political issue.
Yeah.
And if you go back, if you rewind 7 or 8 years, there's plenty of video of Mr. Schumer and Senator Obama and all those talking about border security, saying the same things. Hillary Clinton, the queen of the party, saying the same things, but because Mr. Trump has said it, now it's immoral. We can't do that. We can't secure the border. So it's the sad state of politics that we're in, is that something like this, that for a true emergency, I'm not sure how much of an emergency it is at this point in time on our southern border to declare something like that. But he's grasping at straws. That's as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
This whole concept's pretty frightening, really, because it does seem to open the way for bypassing Congress, bypassing the Constitution in some respects. Right. Now, the way the law is written, as I understand it, there's a whole series of statutes that have at least one of which has to be invoked in order to bring this in. And I think part of the controversies now is that no one is quite certain whether or not, as Patty says, there's argument with both sides, whether there are statutes that apply and to build a wall as such. I take a little bit of issue, say, don't think national border security is important here, or however you just stated that, because I think everyone is saying, yeah, we need border security. We don't need a 2,000-mile wall, which is not going to work anyway.
Oh, no, I'm for border security. I'm just not certain that there needs to be a 2,000-mile wall.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm not sure that's is part of what he's trying to do. But to start pulling these particular levers to get that, I think I think he's really reaching
Ron,
here.
what do you mean when you say a wall doesn't work?
Well, didn't work for the Chinese. It only works if you can have continuous surveillance and enforcement along the whole length of it. That's the only time it can really work, like the Berlin Wall. And then a lot of people still got out in that situation. And this is why it doesn't really work as a complete defense. The French, it didn't work for the poor French in the First World War. Germans just went through the woods, went around it, The Maginot Line didn't work. And because it can't really be defended, or unless you can defend the whole length of it, it isn't really going to work. Now, in certain key areas, yeah. But then they've been showing some video recently of tunnels under the existing walls, that sort of thing.
They weren't deep enough.
Yeah. So, I think I agree. A 2,000-mile wall is probably not going to work. It's an ecological disaster in terms of things, and now we're finding that the border goes through some native lands, which are on both sides of the political border. Well, that's a violation of their rights,
Well, I think to this point with using these particular powers is that, like Ron has said, we are circumventing the normal process.
Yeah.
And this process of arguing, trying to build consensus, is basically what the founders set up. Mm-hmm. They wanted 3 distinct branches of government, and there's a series of things that have to take place to get a law passed. You know, watch Schoolhouse Rock and you'll be able to determine that. But this notion that somehow someone can say, I'm declaring an emergency and I'm going to build a wall, or I'm declaring an emergency and I'm going to shut down, you know, the media, or I'm going to shut down, you know, we're going to call climate change a national emergency. So now this is what we're going to do. I think that's the danger here, is that you put all this power into one individual, and next thing you know, it might not be someone from our party, it might be someone from the left wing or a Bernie Sanders type of person that says, you know what, I'm going to declare a national emergency and I'm going to raise everyone's taxes.
Well, it's got to be based on one of 470 statutes that are on the books. I don't know which one Trump is talking about.
No, and I don't think he has said
Yeah.
that either.
For this.
You know, the problem is too, though, they've been doing the Emergency Act before this act. I mean, this act was done to rein in what was being used. I mean, they also had the Stafford Act, was it, that allowed for medical emergencies, although in some cases they're not even using that anymore. They're going straight to the National Emergencies Act.
The way I understand it, there was no restriction. The subject was not addressed prior to 1974. In fact,
Right.
Woodrow Wilson was the first one to
Right.
invoke the national emergency, and it had to do, I forget, shipping.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, right.
And that and I think that it has been taken off the books. I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, then there's
But-
Franklin Roosevelt with the internment of the Japanese Americans during the Second World War.
That, yes. Yeah,
Another
there
egregious
were
example.
8 or
Exactly.
9, I think. But don't you think, though, that the core problem is the intransigency of political parties these days? When Obama went into office, the Republicans in the Congress said, we're going to deny everything. Remember how
Oh, absolutely.
under John Boehner, they just, how many times, they voted like 50-some times to revoke the
Affordable
Health
Care
Care
Affordable
Act.
health care.
And now we've got
The flipping
what
that.
looks like it's going to be flipped. And we can't keep doing this. We just can't do it. I don't know how you get out of this mess.
I think the idea behind it is good. I mean, the fact that Obama could do that to get the viruses, the antidotes for the viruses developed, and the H1N1. That's important, and you need to act
Quickly.
And Congress simply does not lend itself to doing things quickly, even in a good situation. I mean, one of the things when I first went on to council that surprised me the most was how long it takes to get anything done. There are so many steps that you have to go through for very simple, obvious legislation that you need, and it takes months to do it. If there's a situation or emergency that arises, I know one of the ones they used it for was after 9/11. Bush had used it for various reasons. If there's something you need to act on now, the way the government is set up does not lend itself to this type of quick response. But you're right. Unless we start, shortening some of the processes, if we weren't so dug in on our sides, we would be able to get things done at least in a reasonable amount of time, so that you don't have government shutdowns. So
Right.
you don't have situations like this.
But the public seems to accept a line of thinking that they hadn't accepted in the past. Now, if somebody wears a Magda hat into a restaurant, they can be, they're going to be asked to leave because they're provoking. I mean, just wearing a hat or a T-shirt is provoking violence.
I have an Obama hat. I don't wear it though.
I'll be honest with you. I think if Ron showed up in an Obama hat, I would grant him the right to do that. He has the right to wear. I've never rear-ended a sticker, a car with the sticker of Hillary, or especially those coexist stickers. you know, because sometimes I found those people are the most intolerant of all people, the ones that want to coexist. It never even crossed my mind that if I saw someone in public with a Hillary or an Obama or anything, or that make America great, so be it, you know?
Well,
why all of a sudden do we, what has happened with this generation that feels that they can't, that somehow their life has to be just, you know, wine and roses, and no one can, you know, interfere with them, and oh, I saw that. I mean, that's life.
Another good example is Mrs. Pence taking the job in a school that requires him to, you know, well, you know, in this country, my gosh, you can believe anything you want to. I mean, really, that's part of the whole thing. Now, if you try to, if her hubby and his boss try to make national legislation out of this, then I'll complain about it.
Yeah.
But
I was stunned.
she doesn't want to.
When
you know.
when what was it? The commentator, was it John King, mentioned that somehow, and I didn't see the whole clip, but he pretty much threw out there that why would she continue to get Secret Service protection if she's going into one of these schools that prohibit, you know, a particular thing? It's a Christian school. We have free
Had
right
to do
of
with
association.
abortion, I believe.
Abortion
No,
and
no,
some
it
other
was- it
things,
was,
gays.
Gays. It
Yeah.
was-
Yeah.
Yes, no
Yeah.
student was allowed to attend the
Yeah.
school that was
Yeah.
not,
That was gay.
Yeah.
that was gay,
Yeah.
right? And no teacher could be gay or even have the viewpoint to
Right.
tolerate that.
So John King thought that the vice president's wife shouldn't have
Right. 'cause
Secret Service because she worked there.
she was going to go in there. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
very honestly, I think it was, optics-wise, it was a bad move for her to go there.
She's been doing it forever.
When she quit, though.
Yeah,
She used
but-
to
but-
do it.
but she
And it
used
had
to do it,
never
but-
been brought up,
Yeah.
and I just
Yeah.
thought,
It-
I'm just saying optics. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
wrong for her to take the
Yeah,
job.
It's
in
a
any way,
private
shape, or form.
school,
It's where
you know,
she wants to go,
yeah.
but I don't think that was maybe the best move politically to do that, but if that's what she chooses to do. You know, to me, the problem is on any of these issues, is that the right digs their heels in and said, my way's the correct way and you're gonna listen to me. The left digs their heels in and says, it's all my way and you're wrong. And we refuse to look at both sides. Perhaps this is why you need a National Emergencies Act, because when you get to this type of situation, when there is an emergency, a good emergency, I should say, that you sometimes have to just cut around all that junk. Unfortunately, it gets misused, and
Well, when Obama was in office, he was famous for saying, I've got a pen and a phone and I'll do all this. Then you look at the things that he had signed. They weren't all that controversial to begin with. Maybe a couple of them were. But they had to do mainly with restrictions on the movement of finance and people from in and out of countries that were hostile
Yeah,
to
and that
us.
was used for that, so.
And that the thing that's occurred to me, though, we're talking about the acceptance of a level of hatred that I haven't seen since the '60s. The hatred is hatred, and when you are so absolutely, totally convinced, like you say, that your opinion is the only one that really counts. When I think about somebody being asked to leave a restaurant because they've got a Trump T-shirt on, I think about the young black people sitting in at lunch counters in the '60s. The hatred was the same; it just applied differently. It was the color of the skin. They made people uncomfortable. This isn't the way we do things here. Hatred is hatred,
And that
what
goes
we
on
see,
both sides.
it does. It does.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned, because I was thinking about that. There was just a couple of days ago, there was a situation where a gentleman was asked to leave a gym because he
Yeah.
was wearing a Trump T-shirt, and the owner just said, you know, I'm sorry, but I do not want that here. And there was a big stink about it. You know, to me, the counterpart to that is the gay couple who goes to the bakery and says, I want to have a wedding cake made, and the baker says, no, I'm not going to do it because I don't believe in this. They're both probably wrong, you know, but each side digs in for what they feel is right and say, well, this one's right and this one's not. And
Well, I think that we have to take an honest look at hatred.
Yeah.
And know that it can apply to anyone. Just because you have a certain political viewpoint that you're positive of doesn't mean that you're not a hater.
That's true.
I've never seen so much hatred being spewed since Trump got elected.
Interesting thing happened yesterday. Some congressman gets on a plane to go somewhere. He's in first class, and another passenger accosts him about that. Says, "Why are you flying first class when people are out of work because of the government shutdown?" So again, a bad political move, maybe.
Yeah.
Perception, you know.
What did he say? You know?
No reports of what the congressman said. I expect he continued in his first class seat.
Yeah.
It is nice flying first class.
Not that I would ever know. but
I've done it once in my life, and it was many years
I've been there
ago.
once or twice.
I'm back
I
in
think.
steerage.
Oh, wow.
I got upgraded once.
But don't you see the Emergency Act as a way for a president to just go around a legitimate Congress?
That's
Sure.
true, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what it's being
That's the
used
fear,
for, and that's the
anyway.
threat
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
But I think it's a little overblown. I really do, because, you know, there's this, and we go back to the Trump derangement syndrome. And
Yeah.
because he's thrown this card on the table, everybody now has their hair on fire. And it makes it, you know, to an order of magnitude that's almost close to being a coup.
But you
And,
know,
and it's not.
when you say
okay?
Trump derangement syndrome, though, there are many Republicans that do not want him to use it,
Oh,
and
yeah,
have gone
yeah,
on record
yeah.
for it.
But I'm not going to I would agree. But there's so much more, I guess, time spent on it, and so much more hand wringing about that particular thing, because he throws it out there. The guy's negotiating.
Well, you
That's
know-
what you have to remember, is he's a negotiator.
Yeah.
He likes to provoke people. He likes to pull Nancy's airplane out from under her when she's getting on a bus ready to go on her junket with, you know, 7 of her closest friends and family. He likes to, you know, poke people. That's just his style. And if you're going to let him live rent-free in your head, trust me, he will continue to do that.
Live rent-free in your head?
Exactly. That's
like
what,
that. I like
you
that.
know.
That's pretty good.
So, I mean, and
a lot
everybody
of
gets
echo.
all upset about it. It's like, this guy, I mean, he is a negotiator, he's bombastic, he's always been that way. He throws things out there and to see if he can get a reaction. And everybody's running around like the sky is falling. I just think we're giving him too much attention.
Well, you know, even if he were to enact it, there would be court challenges to it. It's
Oh.
been said that nothing would get done.
Exactly.
It really wouldn't
Yeah.
serve its purpose
Yeah.
in this particular case, because it would be
Exactly.
challenged.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it may be one of those non-issues at this point.
I can't get past the idea that, well, first of all, I do not like Donald Trump. I'm glad he's not in my family.
Your
I
typical
think
drunk uncle.
Who doesn't drink,
He's
yeah.
a very, very hard guy to like. But what I like about him, though, is that he set an agenda to fix things that were broken in Washington. I think that we heard Washington is broken, the government is broken. We heard that a lot until Trump got elected and he started doing something about it. People don't like him doing something about it. There are just we used to say it's the economy, stupid. That was what's his name?
This is Bill Clinton.
It was Clinton's
James Carville.
James Carville. It's
Thank
the
you.
economy,
Yeah.
stupid. And then the economy gets changed radically. You know, unemployment figures going way down for minorities particularly, and all of a sudden we don't care anymore.
Did you? I saw today where if this shutdown continues, though, that the growth is going to go down to 0, which means this could shoot it. You know, you say that Trump, you know, gets done to fix what's broken, but what I see is an even greater divide than there has been in years in
Yes.
the country, and I think he's contributed to that. So while he may want to fix what's broken, I think he's breaking it a little farther.
Because he's so obnoxious. Is it his style or his substance that people object
Both.
to?
Now, that's me. I mean, I don't
What
like
is
the
Me too,
style.
Patty.
What?
Me too.
Yeah.
I think the media
Tell me.
has a large part. I
Well, they
lay,
invented
I
it.
lay a large part of the problem on the feet of the media.
Yeah.
Because if they would report with some semblance of, balance, a lot of this stuff, I mean, they have done more damage to
Oh,
the
I
political
think
process.
that they created him in the first place. The moment
Oh.
he announced, he became the only candidate.
They followed him like a little puppy dog.
I can,
Oh, yeah.
can remember the so-called debates, and all the questions had to do with how do you feel about this thing that Trump said? That every candidate.
And he just stood in the center and just
Yeah, basked in it, yeah.
loved it.
Absolutely. And I don't know where this all ends. With the shutdown, something terrible is going to happen before this is over.
You know, unfortunately, what I heard this morning was that a commentator in Fox and Friends had said, well, you know, only 66% of the people aren't affected by this. It's not that bad. I mean, there's 34% that are.
Well, we're not going to fix it here. We'll wait until the program is over, then we'll do it.
Okay,
We'll declare an emergency.
over breakfast.
Thank you very much.